No doubt, baseball is a game we all love so much. However, we must admit that this sport has had its fair share of controversies. For instance, there are times when individuals within the sport have been tempted to walk the treacherous path of deceit, deliberately breaking the game's rules in a relentless pursuit for an unfair advantage over their opponents. And you can bet that some of these people have given in to the temptations. Over time, we have witnessed various cheating scandals that rocked MLB and even shook the baseball world to its roots. Moving from the cunning act of doctoring the ball to the dark allure of tampering with bats, from the clandestine world of electronic sign stealing to the shadowy realm of performance-enhancing substances, baseball has truly seen quite a number of these sneaky moves. But then, even though we have seen a lot of these cheating cases in baseball, some of them have really stood out as bigger crisis situations than others. So today, we will look at some of the most notorious cases where MLB players tried to cheat their way to success. And guess what? Some of them actually got away with it. Number 5. Garrett Cole. Whenever the conversation turns to sticky substances in baseball, there's one name that often comes to mind, and it's none other than Garrett Cole. Well, this might just be because his case was as direct as it was hefty. After all, the accusation that came against Cole from the Toronto Blue Jays pitching sensation Alek Manoah was quite blunt. Manoah called Cole the worst cheater in the history of MLB without mincing words. He also went on to assert that Cole had employed sticky substances to enhance his pitches. And what's more, he pointed out that Cole had indeed been called out for it. Now, in case you're wondering, the backdrop for this call-out dates back to the crackdown on the use of illegal substances on baseballs in 2021. During this time, umpires began routinely inspecting pitchers for aids like the infamous spider tack, and Cole was among the pitchers who was in the center of all the scrutiny. Of course, this move by the MLB to tighten the rules didn't go unnoticed, and some voices in the league believed it had an impact on Cole's performance. In fact, one of his teammates in the New York Yankees, Josh Donaldson, went as far as claiming that he witnessed a significant drop in Cole's spin rates following the league's ruling. No doubt, it was a topic that garnered significant attention, yet Cole never explicitly denied using illegal substances to enhance his pitches. When pressed on the matter, his response was somewhat evasive, stating that, "I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest." In his words, he acknowledged that there are customs and practices that have been passed down through generations of players. These practices, he implied, might involve some gray areas. Plus, it's a reminder that baseball, like many sports, carries with it a complex web of traditions, expectations, and rules, and sometimes the lines between right and wrong could become blurred. Number 4. Gaylord Perry. The name Gaylord Perry might just be forever linked with one of baseball's most notorious and illegal pitches, the spitball. This pitch, which was outlawed in 1920, became Perry's calling card, and it was widely known that he had mastered the art of using it to his advantage. The story goes that Perry learned the finer points of the spitball from his teammate Bob Shaw in 1964, when they were both playing for the San Francisco Giants. What followed was a career filled with attempts by umpires, opponents, and even curious onlookers to catch Perry in the act of loading up the baseball with any form of foreign substance. These attempts often sparked controversy, but never yielded proof of Perry's shenanigans. It ain't cheating if there's no rule against it, right? Perry seemed to relish the cat-and-mouse game surrounding his alleged illegal pitch use. He believed the mere suspicion that he might throw a spitball would rattle opposing batters and give him a psychological edge. And boy, did he milk that psychological warfare on the mound. Perry would go on to great lengths to mess with the minds of his opponents. Some of his antics including putting grease on his hand and shaking opponents' hands right before a game, or rolling a ball covered in grease into their dugout. But then, one of his most legendary tales involved none other than Pete Rose. Perry claimed that he once shook hands with Rose before a game while hiding his pitching hand, which was coated in grease, behind his back. However, the theatrics didn't stop there. Perry would touch his hat, hair, ears, and face before entering his windup, creating a constant suspicion in the mind of everyone watching. Now, come on. Who goes around courting trouble and suspicion even before playing big games? Well, only Gaylord Perry can. Number 3. Whitey Ford. To be honest, the legendary New York Yankees pitcher Whitey Ford was no stranger to the art of deception on the baseball diamond. In fact, he was among the craftiest cheaters the game had ever seen. Ford's bag of tricks was as varied as it was ingenious. He'd slyly use his wedding ring to doctor the baseball, or enlist the help of his catcher, Elston Howard, who would sneakily slice the ball with a buckle on his shin guard. But Ford's shenanigans didn't stop there. He had a penchant for planting mud pies around the pitcher's mound. And of course, he wasn't doing this for a quaint pastry party. Instead, it was to covertly load the ball with gunk. Oh, speaking of gunk, Ford was the master of the gunk ball. He kept a concoction of baby oil, turpentine, and resin, all in a roll-on dispenser, and he aimed to improve his pitches with this concoction. It was a pitch that baffled many batters. Even the umpires struggled to catch on. Yet, one fateful day, Yogi Berra, who was Ford's teammate, had a mishap that would become the stuff of legends. In a moment of pure confusion, Yogi mistook Ford's gunk for deodorant and applied it generously. The result? Well, let's just say his arm stuck to his sides like glue. Ultimately, this blew the lid on what Whitey Ford had been doing all this while, and the rest, as they say, is history. Number 2. Joe Negro. Y'all remember Joe Negro, right? This player was pitching for the Minnesota Twins and facing off against the formidable Los Angeles Angels and Anaheim when he got exposed for what he was, a cheat. It just so happened that as the game unfolded, Negro did something extraordinary, perhaps even defying the laws of physics. He delivered a slider that moved in such an uncanny manner that it caught the attention of plate umpire Tim Tschida. Intrigued and suspicious, Tschida decided to pay a visit to the pitcher's mound to get a closer look at the enigmatic pitch. However, what transpired next was nothing short of astonishing. As Tschida examined the situation, an emery board mysteriously fell off from Negro's pocket, landing on the mound for all to see. But that wasn't the end of the pitcher's arsenal of questionable tools. To add to the intrigue, second base umpire Steve Palermo would also make a startling revelation. It appeared that Negro was also in possession of a small piece of sandpaper, one that was cunningly contoured to fit a finger, according to Palermo's account. The evidence was mounting against Negro, and the situation seemed almost surreal. Even Palermo couldn't help but comment on the audacity of it all, stating that the guy was so blatant. To him, Negro's actions were akin to a person casually strolling down the street with a bottle of booze during the era of Prohibition. It was just a brazen display of defiance. Well, Negro was promptly ejected from the game, and a 10-day suspension loomed ahead. Plus, the baseball world was left in total disbelief at the audacity of the veteran pitcher. However, Negro was quick to mount a defense, vehemently denying any wrongdoing. In his explanation, he argued that, as a knuckleballer, he required the emery board for the seemingly harmless purpose of filing his fingernails. And what about the sandpaper, you might ask? Well, Negro had a ready answer for that too. Sometimes I sweat a lot, he explained, and the emery board gets wet. And I'll also use the paper for small blisters. Now, that's some smart defense for cheating right there. Number 1. Rick Honeycut. Of course, who else is best suited for the number 1 spot on this list than Rick Honeycut himself? It was September 1980, and the Seattle Mariners were gearing up for a showdown against the Kansas City Royals, and Honeycut, who was a pitcher for the Mariners, decided to employ a rather sneaky tactic. And what this player did was to tape a thumbtack to his finger. But what was his devious plan? Well, it was to secretly tamper with the baseball and give himself an unfair edge. However, little did he know that his scheme was about to unravel in the most unexpected way. As fate would have it, Willie Wilson stepped up to the plate and hit a double. But then it wasn't just a regular hit. Wilson, from his vantage point on second base, spotted that something was amiss, something that would expose Honeycutt's mischievous act. The eagle-eyed Wilson had detected the tack that was taped to Honeycutt's finger, and he wasted no time alerting the umpires. Of course, the game came to an abrupt halt as the umpires gathered to investigate the situation. Well, their scrutiny yielded more than they bargained for, and not only did they find the tack, but they also stumbled upon something rather peculiar. Honeycutt had a substantial gash on his forehead. It turned out that in his attempts to cheat, he had unwittingly jeopardized himself. Absent-mindedly, he had rubbed his face, and in a bizarre twist, nearly poked his own eye out in the process. At that point, the umpires had seen enough. They promptly ejected Honeycutt from the game. But the repercussions didn't end there. The slide player would later face a 10-game suspension and was slapped with a hefty fine of $250. Well, it's safe to say that's just about enough payment for his transgressions. Or, what do you think?